Wind curled through the pines, howling across the winding coastal road, but Athena Morgan kept her foot on the gas. Headlights carved through mist as she took the curve too fast, her heart pounding harder than the storm outside. He doesn't get to control me. Not anymore. The words echoed in her head, a shaky mantra drowned by the roar of tires over slick pavement. Her father's voice had been colder than the main sea, final, commanding. Fabian Morgan didn't yell. He just decided, and the rest of the world fell in line. But tonight, Athena had said no. She didn't even pack. Just grabbed the keys, left the hotel suite, and drove. She didn't care where. She just needed out. The GPS had lost signal an hour ago. Her phone, nearly dead, was useless in the storm. She hadn't seen another car in miles. Pine trees blurred past, then a deer darted across the road. She swerved. The car jerked sideways, skidding. Tires screamed. Gravel sprayed. A flash of white headlights before darkness. She sat there for a moment, dazed, gripping the wheel. The car had slid into a shallow ditch. The engine sputtered, then died. She tried the ignition again. Click. Nothing. The silence that followed was louder than the storm. Perfect, she muttered. Wind rattled the car. A tree grown somewhere nearby. She looked around. No lights, no buildings, just rain, trees, and the deepening dark. She had passed a small harbor sign about 10 minutes back. Maybe someone was down there. She pulled her coat tighter, grabbed her purse, and opened the door. The wind yanked it out of her hand. Rain hit her like cold needles. Her designer heels sank instantly into mud, the kind that sucks your step away and doesn't give it back. Still, she walked. Each step was a fight against the wind. Her coat flapped violently. Her hair, long and soaked, stuck to her face. The scent of salt water crept in. Somewhere below, waves crashed. Angry, rhythmic. The road dipped toward the shore. Her foot caught on a root. She stumbled forward, hands catching wet ground. She didn't get up right away. The earth was cold, but her body was colder. Her limbs trembled, her breath quick and shallow. You did this. You walked away. Number she had escaped. Athena forced herself up, wiping mud from her palms. She could see a light now, dim, swinging, maybe a lantern, a shape behind it. Someone was there. "Hello," she called, but the wind swallowed her voice. The figure moved toward her, a man, tall, steady, wearing a hooded rain jacket, boots and gloves. The lantern flickered across his face. Sharp cheekbones, stubble, eyes like weathered wood. He didn't speak at first. "You okay?" His voice was calm, not rushed, not panicked, grounded. My car, I'm lost," she said, her throat dry. "I just need somewhere to get warm." He didn't ask for her name, just nodded once. "Come on." She hesitated. He noticed. "I live just up the dock. It's warm, dry. You'll freeze out here." Athena blinked through the rain, the exhaustion finally breaking through her adrenaline. She took a step, then another. "I'm Francis," he added, walking beside her now. His tone was simple. No small talk, no assumptions. "Francis Camden." "Athena," she said softly. No last name. The cabin appeared like something out of another time. Weathered shingles, a faded green door, a thin trail of smoke coming from a rusted chimney. He opened the door and motioned her inside. It was warm. A wood-burning stove glowed in the corner. Everything smelled like salt, cedar, and something faintly sweet, maybe cloves or apple preserves. Boots lined the wall. Fishing gear hung neatly above a bench. It wasn't big, but it was lived in, real. Francis didn't fuss. He handed her a towel, then stepped away to stoke the fire. "I'll find you something dry," he said. "There's tea on the stove." Athena stood frozen, the towel clutched to her chest. Her whole life had been marble floors, glass walls, hotel concierges asking if she needed anything. And yet, here in this tiny room lit by firelight, and rain tapping the windows, she felt safe. He returned with a flannel shirt and soft sweatpants. "They'll be big on you, but warm." "Thank you." He just nodded, already turning away to give her privacy. She changed in the small bathroom. The clothes were worn, clean, and oddly comforting. Her reflection in the mirror looked foreign. Wet hair, no makeup, shadows under her eyes. Her body finally began to shake, not from cold but release. She returned to the main room and found Francis seated near the stove, sipping tea, carving something from a block of wood. "I appreciate this," she said, easing into the chair across from him. He glanced up. "Storm like this, people look out for each other? You hungry?" Her stomach growled as if answering. She hadn't eaten since noon. He handed her a steaming bowl, soup, chunky and fragrant. She didn't ask what was in it. She just took a spoonful and felt the warmth bloom through her chest. "You were lucky," Francis said after a long pause. "Cliff Road's not safe in weather like this. You're not from around here." "No," she admitted, "just passing through." He didn't press, just went back to carving. "What are you making?" she asked after a while. "Just a habit," he said. "Hands get restless when it's quiet." She looked at the small shape in his hands. It was a bird, rough around the edges, but detailed in its wings. "Pretty," she said softly. A silence settled between them. Gentle, not awkward. The kind you only get with someone who doesn't need noise to fill space. Athena stared into the fire. Her father would be livid by now. His assistant had probably called her 10 times. She had left the deal, the press conference, the carefully choreographed image of the Morgan legacy. You walked out on Fabian Morgan. Number she walked toward herself. Her eyes began to blur. She blinked hard, but the heat, the quiet, the weight of it all, her fight, her freedom, her fear, crashed down like the storm outside. Francis didn't ask what was wrong. He simply placed a folded blanket across her lap and said, "You'll be safe here." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. The morning came slow and grey, the storm retreating into a hush. Rain had softened to a drizzle, tapping gently against the cabin's window panes like an afterthought. Inside, the warmth of the fire still lingered, the scent of wood smoke blending with the faint aroma of sea salt, and something toasting. Athena stirred on the worn couch, a heavy quilt draped over her. Her eyes blinked open to the unfamiliar ceiling, tracing the cracks in the old wooden beams. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came back. The road, the storm, the man with the lantern. She sat up slowly. The cabin was quiet, but not empty. From the kitchen, she heard the clink of a metal pot. The scent sharpened. Coffee. Her eyes scanned the room again. Modest, clean, a pair of boots near the door, coats hung neatly, books on a shelf, mostly nautical, a weathered radio, humming low with a folk station. It felt like a place built out of routine, not luxury, but it had a soul. Francis stood at the stove, still in his flannel, hair damp from being outside. He turned slightly as he heard her shift. "Morning," he said, without looking up. "Hope you slept." "I did," she replied, her voice scratchy. "Better than I expected." He poured coffee into a chipped blue mug and slid it across the counter toward her. "You're lucky. Storm knocked power out across half the town. We're used to it here." Athena wrapped her hands around the warm mug and took a sip. Strong, no sugar, no milk, just coffee, plain and honest. "You went out already?" she asked. "Had to check the boat. No damage, but a couple traps might have drifted." He dried his hands on a towel and leaned against the counter, studying her with that same even gaze from the night before. "You from Boston?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Close enough." "Figured. You carry yourself like someone who's used to marble floors and polished elevators." Athena looked down at the oversized sweatpants. "Bit out of place, huh?" He gave the faintest smile. You wear them better than you think. Before she could answer, the cabin door creaked open. A girl stepped in, no older than 16, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, boots muddy, jacket damp from drizzle. Her eyes locked onto Athena instantly. "You didn't say we had company," the girl said, not hiding the suspicion in her voice. "This is Athena," Francis said, casual. "She got caught in the storm last night. I found her by the harbor." The girl crossed her arms, sizing Athena up. "You're not from here." "No," Athena replied gently. "Just passing through." The girl said nothing, just kicked off her boots and moved to the table, flipping open a notebook filled with math equations. Francis looked over. "Nora, that's not how we talk to guests." "She's not a guest if she's a stranger," Nora muttered without looking up. Athena tried not to take it personally. The girl had a guardedness she recognized, a wall built not from rudeness but self-preservation. She'd seen it in herself more times than she could count. "I won't be a burden," Athena offered. "As soon as the rain lets up, I'll head back to the road, call a tow or something." "There's no service in the cove," Francis said, pouring himself a cup. "Best you wait till town clears the line. Shouldn't be more than a day." Nora didn't comment, but the flicker of her eyes said plenty. Athena sipped her coffee again. "You two live here alone?" Francis nodded. "Since her mum passed." The words sat heavy for a beat too long. Athena opened her mouth, then stopped. She didn't know what to say. What was appropriate? What could possibly ease that kind of truth? Nora answered for him. 3 years this January." "I'm sorry," Athena said softly. The girl didn't reply. Francis glanced toward the window. "If you're up for it, I can take you down to the docks. Easier to think with fresh air." "I'd like that," Athena said, grateful for the offer and the escape. The wind had eased to a whisper as they stepped outside. The clouds hung low over the water, a soft haze blurring the edge between sea and sky. Boats rocked gently in their moorings, ropes creaking. The world felt suspended. Athena followed Francis along the dock, her borrowed boots tapping against the weathered boards. The air was briny and sharp, and gulls called in the distance. "You fish for a living?" she asked. "Lobster mostly," he said. "Some cod, some crab, whatever the tides give." She watched as he bent down to check a mooring line. His movements were practiced, efficient. He belonged to this place. Every rope, every creak, every shift of wind. "And Nora, she helps when she wants to," he said with a touch of dry humor. "Smart kid, stubborn. Been through more than most her age." "She seems protective." He nodded. "She had to grow up faster than she should have. I don't fault her for it." They reached the end of the dock. Athena looked out at the open water, the way the horizon blurred. It was different from the views she was used to, from penthouses, boardrooms, tinted car windows. This felt raw, untouched. "You come out here often?" Francis asked. "To Maine? To places where the world's quiet?" She let the question settle. "Not enough." He nodded slowly, as if he understood something about her without her needing to say more. "You remind me of someone," he said after a moment. Athena glanced at him. "Is that good or bad?" "She left," he replied. "Didn't belong here. Or maybe she did, but the world she came from wouldn't let her." The way he said it made something in her chest ache. "I don't know where I belong anymore," she admitted. Francis turned to her, his gaze level. "Then maybe you're closer than you think." She looked back at the horizon, the wind brushing her face. From the cabin, Nora watched them from the window, her arms crossed. She didn't trust this woman with the expensive voice and vague answers. She didn't like the way her father looked at her, like he'd let his guard down. Because people didn't just end up here. Not unless they wanted something. And Nora had seen enough people come and go to know nothing good ever lasted. Back on the dock, Athena pulled the coat tighter around herself, the silence stretching long and full between them. And though neither said it out loud, something had shifted. Not trust. Not yet. But the air between them had changed. And the tide, as always, had started to turn. The sun broke through the clouds just before noon, casting gold over the harbour and warming the rooftops of Port Clyde like a quiet apology after the storm. The sea, still restless, curled in soft waves against the dock pilings as if remembering the chaos but choosing calm. Athena stood by the cabin's open window, holding a mug of hot tea. The scent of honey and lemon drifted up with the steam. It was quiet, the kind of quiet she didn't trust, not because it felt threatening, but because it gave her room to think. And when she thought too long, memories had a way of creeping back in. She ran her thumb along the rim of the mug, staring out at the blurred line between water and sky. "You're not used to staying still, are you?" Francis's voice was low, coming from behind her. She turned, startled slightly, though not unpleasantly. He stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, a hint of a smile in his eyes. She shrugged. "Stillness hasn't exactly been a luxury in my world." "Then maybe you've been in the wrong world." His words landed heavier than she expected. She looked down at the mug, unsure what to say. "I fixed the signal line earlier," he added. "You should have a couple bars now, if you need to call someone." Her chest tightened. There it was, freedom, or the illusion of it. "I might wait," she said too quickly. "It's peaceful here." Francis didn't press. Instead, he walked to the table and picked up a small box of netting supplies. "I've got to run a few repairs down at the pier. You're welcome to come if you want to see how boring coastal life really is." Athena gave a soft smile. "I think I could use a little boring." They walked side by side down the weathered path, boots crunching over damp gravel. The town was beginning to stir again. Shopkeepers sweeping sidewalks, a boy riding past on a rusted bike, waves slapping against wooden boats like a slow heartbeat. The storm hadn't done any real damage, just left everything looking slightly more honest. As they reached the pier, a voice called out, "Francis, thought the wind might have carried you out to sea." A man in his 60s stood near a rowboat, sleeves rolled, beard speckled with grey. His grin was warm and mischievous. "Owen," Francis said, nodding. "You remember how to tie off a dock line yet?" Owen laughed and extended a hand toward Athena. "Don't believe I've had the pleasure." Francis glanced toward her. "This is Athena. She stayed the night at the cabin. Storm trouble." Athena shook Owen's hand, offering a polite smile. "Nice to meet you," Owen said, then lowered his voice with a wink. "Don't let this one fool you. He plays gruff, but he's all the heart underneath." Francis shot him a look, but Owen only chuckled and walked off, whistling. Athena raised an eyebrow. "Friend of yours?" "Grew up together," Francis said. "He thinks he knows everything." She smiled, brushing her hair back from her face as the breeze caught it. "Well, he's not wrong about the gruff part." Francis looked at her, amused. "You're not exactly what I expected either." "Oh, you show up soaked and shivering, speak like someone who's ordered wine that costs more than my truck, and somehow still manage to make coffee in a way that suggests you've never poured your own." Athena laughed, surprised not just by his accuracy, but by how gently he'd said it. "Guilty," she said. "But for the record, I poured my own coffee. Just not often." Francis looked at her, not with judgment, but curiosity. "So why were you driving alone in the middle of a nor'easter?" Athena's smile faded. She glanced out at the horizon, where the ocean met the sky in a blur of endless grey blue. "I needed space." "From what?" "From everything," she said softly. "My father, my life, the expectations, the noise." Francis worked in silence for a moment, weaving a broken section of netting. "You don't strike me as someone who runs." "I don't," she said. "At least I didn't think I did. But lately I don't even know what I am." Francis tied a knot, his hands moving with quiet certainty. Well, you're someone who showed up in the middle of a storm and hasn't bolted yet. That's something. Athena looked at him, and there was something in his expression, solid, unshaken, that made her throat tighten. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words stuck. Before either could speak, a voice cut through the air from behind. "Dad." Nora came down the dock, her jacket zipped to the chin, eyes darting toward Athena with practiced wariness. Francis straightened. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said, but she didn't look at him. Her gaze remained fixed on Athena. "I brought lunch," Nora added, holding up a brown paper bag. "Thought maybe you forgot." "I didn't, but thanks." He reached for it and gestured toward Athena. "You remember?" "I remember," Nora said quickly, then turned to Athena. "So you're still here?" Athena felt the chill immediately. She offered a gentle tone, "Just for a little longer." Nora nodded slowly, arms crossed. "You're not like the people from around here." "I know," Athena said, "but I'm not trying to be." "Then what are you trying to be?" Nora's question came not as an attack, but a genuine challenge, like she needed to "I'm not here to hurt anyone." Francis gave a slight nod, not pushing further. "Then we'll see," he said. "Sometimes the sea brings in strangers, and sometimes it washes out the ones who don't want to stay." She didn't know if it was a warning or a truth, maybe both, but as they stood there, the wind rising again, something settled between them. Not comfort, not yet, but a shared tension, a thread pulled tight, and neither of them was quite ready to let go. The smell of seaweed and salt hung in the morning air, carried in on a breeze that made the window shutters creak. Athena stood on the back steps of Francis's cabin, watching the tide roll in and out in its endless rhythm. There was something about the water that grounded her. It didn't care who you were or what you left behind. It moved on, with or without your permission. Behind her, the door opened with a soft creak. You planning to just stand there all morning, or were you hoping the ocean would give you answers? Francis's voice was calm, laced with that dry coastal wit she was starting to expect from him. She didn't turn around. "Maybe both." He came to stand beside her, handing over a slice of toast, still warm, with butter melting into the edges. "No coffee?" she asked. "Ran out this morning. Boat comes in later." She smirked. "I thought New Englanders couldn't function without caffeine." He grinned faintly. "We adapt." They stood in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that didn't ask for anything, just the wind, the waves, the occasional cry of a gull overhead. Francis leaned on the railing, his gaze cast toward the lobster trap stacked near the edge of the dock. "You ever worked with your hands?" Athena raised an eyebrow. "Like manual labor?" He nodded. "It's not as glamorous as walking through glass doors and shaking hands with people who've never gotten theirs dirty." She hesitated, then answered honestly, "Number I haven't." Francis nodded, as if he expected it. "Well, you're about to." Her eyes widened slightly. "Excuse me?" He tossed her a pair of gloves. "Boat leaves in 20 minutes. Low tide. We've got a short window to reset lines before the current shifts." She looked down at the gloves, then back at him. "You're serious. Dead serious. You're eating my food, borrowing my flannel, and standing on my steps looking for answers. Least you can do is earn some salt." She wanted to argue, but part of her knew he was right. Another part was curious what it would feel like. "Fine," she said, slipping the gloves on. "But if I fall in, I'm blaming you." Francis smirked. "You fall in, I'll let the ocean decide if it wants to keep you." The boat rocked gently as Athena stepped aboard, clutching the railing like a lifeline. Francis moved around her with ease, checking lines, organizing traps, making quiet notes to himself. It wasn't the kind of boat you saw in films. There was nothing shiny about it. Just wood, ropes, buckets, and the faint smell of bait. But it felt alive. He handed her a crate. "Hold this steady while I drop the marker." She braced herself as the boat bobbed in the deeper current. Francis moved with precision, measured, unfazed by the sway. He tossed the marker into the water, the buoy dancing as it landed. "This trap stays down for 3 days," he explained. "Then we pull, check for weight, reset if we're lucky." Athena nodded, trying not to look too unsure. He watched her for a beat. "You're thinking this is beneath you." "No," she said quickly. "I'm just trying not to mess up." Francis gave a faint nod. "Good answer." They worked in silence for a while. She helped bait a few traps, her hands clumsy, but improving. He didn't correct her often, just enough to guide. There was no performance here, no pretense. Everything mattered, and nothing was wasted. By midday, her back ached, and her shoulders burned. But something about the ache felt satisfying. She wiped sweat from her brow and looked out across the harbor, chest rising with a quiet pride she hadn't expected. Francis handed her a water bottle, then leaned against the railing. "You did better than most first-timers." Athena smirked. "That's not saying much, is it?" He chuckled. "No, it's not, but it's something." They drifted for a while, letting the current rock them gently. The sun had broken through the clouds, casting soft light across the water. Athena looked over at him, his jaw set, eyes narrowed against the sun. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "You could have moved, started something easier." He took a long breath. "Because this is real. The tide doesn't lie. The sea doesn't fake loyalty. You work hard, you earn. You slack off, you go hungry. It's simple." She looked away, her voice quiet. "Simple sounds nice." Francis turned toward her, studying her face for a long moment. "You're running from something." Her fingers tightened around the water bottle. "What makes you say that?" "Because people don't end up in Port Clyde on accident. Especially not dressed like you were, in the middle of a storm." Athena looked down, then back at him. "You're not wrong." He waited, but she didn't offer more. "Fair enough," he said. "You'll tell me when you're ready." She met his gaze, surprised. "You're not going to push?" Francis shrugged. "What good would it do? People don't spill truth because someone demands it. They spill it when silence gets too loud." Her throat tightened. "You sound like someone who's been left before." He didn't answer right away, just turned his gaze back to the water. "My wife, Nora's mum, cancer, quick, quiet. Didn't give us time to say everything we wanted." Athena felt the weight in his voice, not bitterness, but the ache of something unfinished. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. Francis gave a small nod. She liked the sea too, said it reminded her that no matter how messy life got, the tide would always come back around. They sat in silence after that, the wind wrapping around them like a blanket neither of them could fully hold on to. Back on shore, Nora stood on the porch, arms folded. She watched the two figures on the boat, her father laughing gently at something the stranger had said. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't know what Athena's story was, but something about it didn't sit right. People didn't change overnight, and people who showed up in storms usually left the same way they came, in chaos. As the boat pulled into dock, Athena climbed out, feet unsteady but smile genuine. "I didn't fall in," she said triumphantly. "Yet," Francis replied, handing her a coiled rope. They shared a laugh, the kind that lingered just a second too long. And behind them, on the porch, Nora watched with quiet eyes, suspicion brewing, walls rising, and a storm, not of wind, but of secrets, beginning to build. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over the harbor as Athena rinsed her hands at the outdoor spigot behind the cabin. Salt clung to her skin, her sleeves were damp, and her arms ached in a way that felt strangely earned. She'd never ended a day like this before, without emails, appointments, or the dull ache of fluorescent lights in a high-rise boardroom. This ache was different. It was real. She dried her hands on a towel hung by the porch and glanced toward the horizon. The sky was streaked with amber and lavender, the kind of sunset that made the world feel quieter, like even time was catching its breath. "You've got sea legs now," came Francis's voice from the side, carrying a warmth she hadn't noticed the first night. She turned to see him leaning against the porch post, arms crossed, eyes half lit by the fading sun. "Barely," she said, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I think my spine is still trying to figure out which way is up." "You didn't complain once." "I wanted to," she admitted. "I just figured I already owed you enough without adding whining to the list." Francis chuckled, low and genuine. "You're not what I expected." "Trust me," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Neither am I." A screen door creaked behind them. Nora stepped out, holding a plate wrapped in a dish towel. She paused, taking in the scene. Her gaze moved between her father and Athena like a silent ledger tallying moments that didn't add up. "I made cornbread," she said, finally, setting the plate down on the table. "Mabel sent over some of that chowder you like." Francis smiled. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Nora replied, but her eyes flicked back to Athena. "Dinner's on the table." With that, she disappeared back inside, the door shutting more firmly than necessary. Francis glanced toward it. She's still figuring things out. She doesn't trust me. She doesn't trust much of anyone these days. Athena nodded slowly. She's right to be cautious. Francis tilted his head. "You always this self-aware. Only when I'm not pretending." They moved inside, the small kitchen glowing under the soft light of the hanging bulb. The table was simple, the food hot. Francis poured water into mismatched glasses, while Athena took a seat across from Nora, who avoided her gaze, spooning chowder into her bowl with methodical precision. Athena tried. "This smells amazing. Thank you for making it." Nora shrugged. "It's just soup." "You cook often?" "When I want to eat something decent." Athena smiled gently. "I used to cook with my mum when I was younger. Nothing too impressive, mostly pancakes. I was a professional egg scrambler by age 7. Nora didn't react, just stirred her bowl. Francis stepped in. "She makes a great berry pie, you know." Nora raised an eyebrow. "You baking with her now?" He chuckled. "Not yet, but I'm holding out hope." Athena met Nora's eyes, something soft and direct in her voice. "I know I probably seem like someone who doesn't belong here." "You said it," Nora replied quickly, not unkindly, just honest. "But I'm trying," Athena added. "And I know trying doesn't erase everything else. I just wanted you to know that." For a moment, silence stretched across the table. Then Nora pushed her bowl away gently. "I have homework." She stood and left the room without another word. Athena exhaled, the weight of it sitting heavy in her chest. "I'm not great with teenagers." Francis gave a small smile. "Nobody is." "I don't want to disrupt this," she said quietly. "The rhythm you've built, it works." "She's been through more than she lets on," Francis said, his tone shifting, low and careful. "When my wife got sick, Nora kept it together for everyone else. She never really had a space to fall apart." Athena folded her hands in her lap. "She's afraid I'll make things unstable. She's afraid you'll leave." The word struck something deep. She looked down at her hands. Francis watched her, studying the edges of her silence. "Is she wrong?" Athena didn't answer right away. The truth knotted in her throat, tangled with guilt and hesitation. "I didn't come here to stay," she said finally, "but I didn't expect to feel what I'm feeling either." He nodded slowly, not judging, not interrupting. I spent so long moving in circles that felt important, but left me empty. I didn't even realize how loud everything was until I stepped into this silence. It's terrifying. Francis leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. You've got the look of someone who's been told what to want her whole life. I've been branded since I could walk, she said, her voice tight. Fabian Morgan's daughter. Future face of Morgan Maritime. That's what they used to call me in interviews. Francis raised an eyebrow. Morgan! She froze. The name had slipped out before she could pull it back. She tried to smooth it over. It's a complicated last name. Francis didn't push, but she could feel the shift in his energy. Not suspicion, but curiosity. Like a knot had formed and he was waiting to see if she'd untangle it herself. She stood abruptly. Thank you for dinner. I need a minute. She stepped out onto the porch, closing the door softly behind her. The wind had picked up again, brushing across her face like a reminder. She leaned against the railing, staring out at the darkening sky, guilt sitting like a stone in her chest. Inside, Francis cleared the dishes, his movements slow. He glanced toward the closed door, brows furrowed, then to the hallway where Nora's door was shut. His daughter wasn't wrong to be cautious, because Francis could feel it now. Athena wasn't just running from something, she was hiding something too. And whatever it wasn't going to stay hidden for long. The sky was thick with fog the next morning, the kind that hung low and made the harbor look like a half-remembered dream. Boats bobbed silently in the still water, their outlines blurred, muffled in grey. Athena stood by the cabin window, a cup of tea warming her hands, her reflection staring back at her, half-faded in the glass. She hadn't slept. The slip, the name, still echoed in her head like a dropped stone in a quiet room. Fabian Morgan. She'd said it without thinking. And Francis had caught it. She knew. He hadn't said anything, but something in his eyes had shifted, like a question that hadn't yet found its voice. She pressed the cup to her lips but didn't drink. Behind her, the floor creaked. She turned to see Nora walking toward the front door, backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds tangled around her neck. Morning, Athena offered gently. Nora barely nodded. I'm heading to Mabel's. She needs help prepping for tomorrow's meeting. Athena tilted her head. What meeting? Town council. They're voting on whether to sell the eastern dock. Developers want it for some fancy expansion. Her voice was flat, but there was an edge buried in it. But it's the only place the smaller boats can launch when the tides shift. Athena's brows drew together. They'd sell that. Who would even propose something like that? Nora shrugged. Some corporate rep came a few months back, started sweet-talking folks about a resort. Private slips, the usual. Promised jobs, money, new roads. And they believed that? Some did. Nora's gaze narrowed slightly. People believe anything when they're tired enough. The girl opened the door, paused. You might want to come, if you're still here tomorrow. Then she was gone. Athena stood frozen. The words clung to her. Resort, private slips, corporate rep. Her heart dropped. She knew that pitch. She delivered that pitch. 3 months ago, her father had handed her a file titled Eastern Seaboard Redevelopment. Port Clyde was on page 4, a red star beside the name. Proposed marina upgrade, expansion, acquisition. She stepped back from the window as if it had burned her. Francis, she called, her voice too calm to match the storm building in her chest. He appeared in the hallway, pulling on his sweater. You all right? Can I borrow your phone? Mine's dead again. He reached over to the counter and handed it to her without question. Landline's out, but I've got a signal. Barely. She nodded, walking out onto the porch for privacy. Her fingers hovered over the screen before she finally tapped the name she didn't want to see. Vanessa Troy. The call rang twice before a crisp, polished voice answered. Athena, my God, are you okay? I'm fine, she said quickly. What's happening in Port Clyde? Vanessa didn't miss a beat. We're moving ahead. Your father assumed you'd briefed the local council before taking off. The legal framework's solid. Dock access, shoreline surveys, conditional permits. Why? Athena's stomach turned. You're actively acquiring public dock space. Yes, Vanessa said slowly. That was always the plan. You were in the meetings, Athena. I didn't know they were already pushing local votes. Well, Fabian wants it done by Q3. We're on a deadline. Athena's breath caught. Athena. Vanessa's tone shifted. Why are you asking? You're not getting cold feet, are you? She swallowed hard. I just needed clarity. Good, Vanessa said. We've got this under control. Your father expects results. Athena ended the call without responding. She stared out at the fog-draped harbor, a place she hadn't known existed 6 months ago, a place that now felt more real than the corner office and designer heels she'd been raised to chase. She felt sick. Later that afternoon, she wandered into town, walking past weathered shops and salt-stained windows. Everyone seemed to know each other here. People waved, stopped to talk. Fishermen shared coffee outside the bait shop, and a group of kids played in a field near the church. It wasn't perfect, but it was connected. She found herself standing in front of a bulletin board posted outside the town hall. A faded flyer advertised the council meeting. Below it, a handwritten note: "Protect our docks. Keep Port Clyde working." Athena's hand hovered near the paper. Her throat tightened. She told you, didn't she? The voice made her jump. Francis stood behind her, hands in his jacket pockets, his eyes steady. She mentioned it, Athena said quietly. And, she turned toward him. And I know what this is. I've seen this same play run a dozen times. Promise the locals something shiny and clean. Throw around words like revitalization. Then strip away the soul of the town piece by piece. Francis didn't speak. Athena took a breath. My father is behind it. Morgan Maritime owns the company pushing for this deal. Francis's expression didn't change, but something in his posture pulled tighter. You're sure? I've seen the plans. I was in the meetings. They want the eastern dock, then the whole harbor, a resort, luxury slips, high-end restaurants. The fishermen here, they won't survive the taxes, the permits, the foot traffic. Francis stared at her, the silence suddenly deafening. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because I didn't know until today that Port Clyde was on the list. I didn't know I was standing in the middle of it. And because I need you to know. I didn't come here to lie. He stepped closer. You didn't come here to tell the truth either. Athena looked away, the sting of his words landing hard. I didn't know how, she said. I didn't even know what the truth was anymore. But I'm trying. Francis's eyes searched hers. So what are you going to do about it? She exhaled slowly. I don't know yet, but I can't walk away, not now. A long silence stretched between them. Then, softer, Francis said, This town's been through enough. You bring a storm with you, Athena. Make sure you're not part of what tears it apart. She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I won't be. He held her gaze a moment longer, then turned and walked toward the dock, the fog beginning to lift behind him. And Athena, standing alone on the sidewalk, felt the weight of both her worlds pressing in. But this time, she wasn't going to be quiet. Not anymore. The church bells rang out softly across the harbor, their chime floating through the crisp evening air. Athena stood on the edge of the community center parking lot, clutching a folded jacket and watching townspeople file into the building ahead. The town council meeting had drawn a larger crowd than expected. You could feel it in the air, tension masked as polite chatter, concern tucked into small talk. Port Clyde was bracing for a decision, and Athena was at the center of it. She hadn't told Francis she was coming. He hadn't asked. After yesterday, space seemed like the most she could offer. But silence didn't sit well on her. Not anymore. She walked up the steps slowly, slipping into the back of the room just as the meeting began. The space was simple. Folding chairs, a podium, a few water pitchers. Locals filled the seats, leaning forward, whispering. An old man cleared his throat into the microphone. We'll begin with old business. Item 1. Coastal road maintenance. Athena's eyes scanned the crowd until they found him. Francis, standing near the back wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't look at her. Not once. On the far side, Nora sat beside Mabel, both of them whispering. Mabel looked over, her gaze pausing on Athena with a flicker of recognition. Something in her eyes said she knew this wasn't just about docks and property lines. It never had been. Athena sat still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, until the man at the podium shifted his papers and spoke again. And now, the motion to open the floor regarding the Eastern Dock proposal. That was it. The air in the room changed instantly. The council member, a thin woman in wire-rimmed glasses, adjusted the mic. As you all know, Greenshaw Development has submitted a formal proposal to acquire rights to the Eastern Dock for redevelopment. They've offered public access assurances and long-term investment in infrastructure. The decision will rest on whether we feel this move benefits the town, financially and practically. Someone scoffed under their breath. Murmurs spread like wind through dry grass. I'd like to open the floor, she continued. Any residents who wish to speak, please do so now. A man in his 40s stood up. My grandfather docked boats there. My father did too. You sell that dock. We're not just selling wood and water. We're selling history. Applause rippled. A woman followed. They say they'll preserve public access. Until they don't. Until some private yacht club writes a check. More nods. Tension built. Athena's pulse quickened. She could feel the moment approaching. The weight of what she knew. The guilt of what she hadn't said. She rose to her feet slowly, every eye in the room turning towards her, like a tide. Some faces softened in curiosity, others narrowed, guarded. She stepped up to the front. The microphone wavered as she pulled it towards her, her voice steady but low. My name is Athena Morgan, she began, and the room stilled completely. She didn't pause. She couldn't. My father is Fabian Morgan. He's the majority stakeholder behind Greenshaw Development. A gasp slipped from someone in the second row. Nora's head snapped up. Athena swallowed hard. I didn't come here to represent him. In fact, I walked away from the company weeks ago. I didn't even know Port Clyde was one of the sites on his development list, until I saw the proposal fly with my own eyes. Whispers swelled, but she pressed forward. I know the language they use. I've helped craft it. Revitalization, investment, modernization. They sound good, but what they really mean is erasure. They build something shiny, and they leave people behind. People like you. She paused, scanning the faces in the room. Some skeptical, some stunned. This isn't just another town to them. It's a number on a map. But to me, now it's more than that. It's where I remembered what it feels like to wake up and breathe air that hasn't been filtered through glass and concrete. It's where I learned that quiet isn't something to run from. It's something to fight for. Francis still hadn't looked at her, but she kept going. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I've done enough of that in my life, but I wanted to tell you the truth, before someone else told it the wrong way. She stepped back from the podium, her heart thudding against her ribs like waves against the dock. The silence hung long and uncertain. Then Mabel stood up. Well, she said, clearing her throat, I don't know about the rest of you, but I believe her. Someone clapped, then another, and another. The sound swelled, not like an ovation, but like something cracking open. Francis turned slowly, finally meeting Athena's eyes, and in that moment, she didn't see judgment. She saw something quieter. Uncertainty. but not rejection. Later, as the crowd thinned and the council recessed into private deliberation, Athena stepped out onto the steps, the night air cool against her skin. She sat alone on the top step, arms resting on her knees. Footsteps approached. She didn't need to look. Francis sat beside her, not too close. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes," she said. "I did." A long pause stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of boat ropes creaking in the harbor. "You're still a Morgan," he said finally. "I know. Still part of the machine." "I was," she whispered, "but I don't want to be anymore." He looked at her then, his eyes darker in the porch light. "So what are you?" Athena turned her gaze toward the water. "I'm someone who's finally telling the truth, even if it costs me everything." Francis didn't answer, but he didn't leave either, and for now, that was enough. The fog rolled back in overnight, swallowing the harbor in a soft silver hush. Athena stood at the kitchen sink, staring through the small window as the outlines of the boats vanished and reappeared like ghosts. She held a sponge in her hand, but hadn't moved in minutes. The night before kept playing in her mind on repeat. Her words at the council meeting, the faces in the crowd, Francis's silence. She hadn't spoken to him since. Not really. Just sat beside him for a few minutes under the stars, neither of them saying what needed to be said. Behind her, the door creaked open. "You're going to rub the finish off that cup." Francis's voice was soft, not teasing, more like he didn't know whether he should be saying anything at all. Athena turned. "I was thinking." He stepped in, shrugging off his jacket. "Dangerous thing to do before breakfast." She cracked a faint smile, but it didn't last. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she admitted, "but I think that's probably a good sign." Francis leaned against the counter beside her. The kettle on the stove hissed gently, the only sound between them for a long stretch. "What happens now?" he asked. Athena shook her head. "The council votes in 48 hours. They could still approve it, even after what I said." "They might," he said, "or they might not." Athena turned to face him. "Do you think they believe me?" Francis didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "I think they believe you're telling the truth. That counts for something." It wasn't the reassurance she wanted, but it was honest. "Do you believe me?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. Francis looked at her. Really looked. Eyes searching her face like he was trying to read something between the lines. "I believe you're trying," he said. "And that's more than I expected when you washed up here." The kettle began to whistle. Athena turned away, blinking faster than she wanted to. She poured the water, added a tea bag, and placed the mug on the table with careful precision. "I want to stop this," she said, "not just for Port Clyde, for me. I'm tired of being the echo of someone else's choices." Francis sat down across from her. "Then fight. I don't know how to win against someone like my father." "Then don't try to win," he said. "Just tell the truth, over and over, until someone listens." There was a knock at the door before Athena could respond. A brisk, sharp rhythm. Francis exchanged a glance with her before standing to answer it. Vanessa Troy stood on the porch, polished and unbothered by the fog, her tailored coat buttoned to the throat. Her smile was tight, professional. She looked completely out of place against the weathered wood of the cabin. "Athena," she said coolly, "may I come in?" Athena's chest tightened. She nodded slowly. "Of course." Francis didn't speak. He stepped back, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Vanessa stepped inside, her eyes sweeping over the room like she was appraising the furniture. "Charming," she said. Athena stayed standing. "Why are you here?" Vanessa set her handbag down carefully. "Because Fabian knows. About the meeting. About your little speech. And he asked me to come remind you what's at stake." Athena folded her arms. Did he send you to threaten me? Vanessa laughed once, a delicate sound. Oh, come on, Athena. No one's threatening you. This is business. He's concerned. You're making things messy. Athena glanced at Francis, who hadn't moved. Maybe it's time it got messy. Vanessa stepped closer. Listen, we both know this town won't last another decade without investment. You're not saving Port Clyde. You're delaying the inevitable. No, Athena said. I'm giving people the chance to decide what kind of future they want. Vanessa sighed. Fabian's going to push this deal through, whether you're in his corner or not. The difference is, if you stand with him, you walk away with dignity. If not, Francis stepped forward slightly. If not, she still walks away knowing she did something with a spine. Vanessa blinked, startled, then gave a shallow smile. And you must be the fisherman. Athena's voice was cold now. You can go, Vanessa. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, then collected her bag. This isn't over. I know, Athena said. When the door closed behind her, Athena leaned against it, heart racing. Francis exhaled slowly. So, that was her. She's always been the mouthpiece, Athena muttered. He never has to get his hands dirty. Francis nodded once. What are you going to do? Athena looked up at him. Eyes sharp now. Steady. I'm going to fight harder. He studied her, the tension still in his shoulders. You sure you're ready for what that means? No, she said honestly. But I'm done hiding. Francis stared at her a moment longer. Then finally, he nodded. The fog began to lift outside, and so did something between them. The sun was just beginning to warm the edges of the dock as Athena walked slowly along the weathered planks, her hands buried deep in the pockets of Francis's old jacket, the same one she'd borrowed the day after the storm. The air still carried that distinct scent of salt and cedar, but the tension in her chest was sharper now, more personal, more pressing. Her footsteps were light, careful. Every part of her felt like it might come undone if she moved too fast. Voices echoed up from below, fishermen talking over crates, ropes slapping the sides of boats, and somewhere nearby, Nora's laughter. It stopped the second Athena came into view. Nora straightened beside Mabel, who was handing out muffins from a wicker basket. The warmth of the morning sun clashed against the coolness that settled in Nora's expression. You're out early, Athena said, forcing a small smile. We live here, Nora replied flatly. We don't get the luxury of sleeping in when the world's trying to erase us. Athena flinched just slightly. I'm not trying to erase anyone. You think showing up to one council meeting makes up for what your father's company has done? Nora folded her arms. People here are scared, Athena. Some of them think you're part of it. The ones who don't are just waiting to be proven wrong. Mabel gave Nora a soft nudge, but the teenager stood her ground. Athena took a breath, steady and slow. I know I've given people reasons to doubt me. I know my name doesn't help. Then change it, Nora snapped. Walk away from it, completely. Don't just say you're different, be different. Athena looked down at her boots. She wished it were that simple. Mabel placed a muffin into her hand gently. It's not the name that matters, honey. It's what you're willing to sacrifice to prove it doesn't define you. The words sank in like stone on water, rippling beneath her ribs. Athena nodded quietly and turned back toward the cabin, the muffin untouched. Inside, Francis was at the table, sorting through a pile of mail. He looked up as she entered, his brow furrowed. I ran into Nora, she said softly. She's not thrilled I'm still here. She's not wrong to be wary, he said, without looking up. But she's also not 16 forever. She'll learn that not everything's black and white. Athena leaned against the wall, arms crossed. She told me to walk away from my name. Francis set the envelopes down. Would you? Her silence was the answer. He sighed, standing and pouring 2 cups of coffee. That name doesn't make you guilty, But it does mean you've got to work twice as hard to prove what side you're on. She accepted the mug, wrapping her fingers around the heat. I don't want people to think I'm just a runaway heiress looking to play hero. Then stop worrying about how you look, he said. Start showing up. The words weren't cruel. They were real. That was what unnerved her most. His ability to strip everything down to the core without raising his voice. She nodded once, then sat at the table beside him. There's something I haven't told you, she said after a moment. Francis didn't move. All right. When Vanessa came yesterday, she wasn't just sent to scare me. He looked up now, quiet and alert. She brought a contract, offered me a deal, said if I publicly stepped back, distanced myself from the protest, they'd delay the vote 6 months, long enough for the heat to die down, for me to disappear without dragging the Morgan name through the mud. Francis stared at her, unreadable. And I didn't sign it. His shoulders relaxed by a fraction, but his eyes remained hard. Why not? Because I'm done disappearing. They sat in silence for a beat too long. Then, with a soft clink, he set his mug down. You know what this means, right? He asked. You keep pushing this, and it's not just the company. Your father's going to come for you, publicly, quietly. He's not going to let you damage his brand. I'm not trying to damage it, she said, voice trembling. I'm trying to stop pretending it hasn't damaged me. Francis nodded slowly, like he understood more than he said. You're going to need help. I was hoping I already had some. He didn't smile, but he didn't say no. That afternoon, Athena walked to the center of town, her breath catching when she saw what was posted outside the cafe. Flyers, dozens of them, stapled in rows. Save our dock. Council vote this Thursday. In bold beneath it, no corporate takeover. She didn't post them. Someone else had taken up the fight. Inside the cafe, whispers rose as she entered. She could feel the stares, some curious, others cautious, a few cold. She ordered tea and sat near the window, keeping her eyes low. Minutes later, Mabel slid into the chair across from her without asking. You made a mess, dear. Athena smiled tightly. That seems to be my specialty. Mabel leaned in, her eyes sharper than her age would suggest. But you're sticking around, that's more than I expected. I want to help. Then do it, Mabel said simply. Not with speeches or promises. With time, with sweat. This town doesn't need a voice. It needs hands. Athena nodded, the tension in her chest shifting. Outside, the sky turned a deeper gray, the wind curling around the corners of buildings like a whisper of something coming. And inside, Athena felt something take root. Not certainty, not yet, but purpose. And this time she wasn't running from it. Rain began to fall just after dusk. Light at first, like the sky was testing its voice. The town had gone quiet. Buildings tucked in for the night, windows glowing with the soft flicker of lamps and dinner conversations. Athena sat on the edge of the dock under the awning of the boathouse, watching the ripples spread across the water in perfect circles. She hadn't seen Francis since morning. He'd been distant, but not cold, quiet, but not absent. She could feel something shifting in him too, something slow, like the tide. A soft creak of wood behind her made her glance back. Mabel approached with a scarf wrapped tight around her shoulders, holding a folded tin in her arms. You planning to catch a cold, or just the view? She asked, settling beside Athena without waiting for an answer. Maybe both, Athena replied with a faint smile. Mabel opened the tin and pulled out 2 slices of banana bread. You'll need this more than me. Athena accepted the piece, the warmth grounding her. I talked to a few of the fishermen today, Mabel said after a moment. They've started pulling their permits, bracing for the worst. Some think it's already too late. Athena's chest tightened. It's not. We still have time. Mabel turned her head slowly, studying her. Time's only useful if you know what to do with it. Athena took a shaky breath. I want to show them I mean it, that I'm not just here for a dramatic stand at a podium. I want to fight for this place, for them. And for yourself, Mabel said gently. Athena's eyes filled with a sudden heat. I never belonged anywhere, she whispered. Always too polished for the people I wanted to understand. Too quiet for the boardrooms I was raised in. Mabel reached over, placing a hand over hers. Sometimes it takes getting lost to realize where you were supposed to be all along. Athena blinked hard, holding that moment close like a fragile thing. The sound of boots on wet wood made both women glance up. Francis stood a few paces away, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. I'll leave you two, Mabel said softly, giving Athena's hand a gentle squeeze, before rising and walking off into the night. Francis stepped closer, his coat speckled with rain. You've been out here a while. I needed air, Athena said, standing slowly. Couldn't sit still. He nodded, stepping under the awning beside her. The silence between them swelled. I heard about the permits, she said. Word travels fast in a town this small. They think we've already lost. They've seen things taken before. His voice was low. Promises broken, outsiders come and go. You can't blame them for bracing. She looked at him then. Do you believe we can stop it? Francis hesitated, then finally said, I believe we can try. The rain picked up, tapping harder against the roof above them. Athena stepped forward, close to the edge of the dock. The wind lifted strands of her hair and carried the smell of rain-soaked wood and brine. I've been thinking, she said, voice louder now over the rain. We don't just need to block the deal. We need to make it impossible to ignore. A protest, visible, united. Francis tilted his head. You mean a media circus? I mean a statement, she said. A community standing together, on the water, at the docks, peaceful, unshakable. He studied her for a long moment, then asked, And who's going to organize that? I will, she said, meeting his eyes. But I can't do it alone. Francis looked past her, out at the harbour. If this town puts their trust in you and it backfires, it won't, she said, stepping closer. Because this time, I'm not doing it for Fabian or Morgan Maritime. I'm doing it for Nora, for you, for every single soul who depends on this shoreline to breathe. Her voice cracked slightly, but she didn't look away. Francis held her gaze, something shifting behind his eyes. Then slowly he nodded. I'll help you, he said. But just so you know, this kind of thing changes people. Some for better, some not. Athena nodded. I'm ready for that. They stood there for a moment in the rain's rhythm, the air between them thick with something fragile and forming. Not quite love, not yet, but trust, earned and tested, quiet and real. You should head in, Francis said softly. Storm's coming again. She hesitated, then looked up at him. Will you walk with me? He gave a small nod, and they moved together along the dock, side by side, footsteps syncing with the beat of the falling rain. Back at the cabin, Nora watched from her bedroom window. Her breath fogged the glass. She saw them in silhouette, Athena and her father, walking like two people who weren't sure where they were going, but knew they'd get there together. And something in Nora's chest softened. Just a little. But she still kept the curtains drawn, still kept her distance. Because trust wasn't just something you gave back. It had to be earned, again and again. One choice at a time. The protest was set for dawn. The harbour would be the stage. The docks the line they refused to cross. Boats would form a blockade. Quiet, unmoving, symbolic. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be angry. It would be firm, visible, real. Athena stood in the small community centre, surrounded by charts and maps, flyers half-folded, coffee growing cold in paper cups. Mabel was pinning up a printed route of the harbour. Owen double-checked a short list of press outlets that had confirmed they'd be sending a camera crew. Word had traveled fast. Outside, through the fogged windows, Athena could see Nora walking down the steps with a group of other teens holding handmade signs. "Keep our harbor working. Port Clyde isn't for sale." Their voices were muffled but full of energy. It should have felt like momentum, like a wave finally catching wind. But the pit in Athena's stomach had been growing all morning. Her phone buzzed on the table. Again. She didn't have to look at the screen. She already knew. Francis walked in through the back door, rain still dripping from his shoulders, a folded tarp under one arm. "They're setting up by the marina entrance," he said. "Owen's got the anchor crew in place. Fog's rolling in, but we'll still be visible by camera." Athena nodded, forcing a breath. "Good. You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't." He set the tarp down and stepped closer, reading her expression carefully. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer at first. Instead, she reached for her phone and handed it to him. The screen lit up with a single name. Fabian Morgan. Missed call. 4:32 a.m. Francis's jaw clenched. "He's not done," she said quietly. "And he's getting desperate." Francis set the phone down slowly. "What did he say?" "He didn't leave a message, but Vanessa sent me an email last night." She pulled a printed copy from her bag, unfolding it like it carried poison. Francis scanned the words silently. A new offer. Private payout. Full non-disclosure agreement. Immediate removal of all protest materials in exchange for a donation to the town's infrastructure fund. Wrapped in careful legal language, but clear as daylight. "Bribe," he muttered. Athena nodded. "He's not even hiding it anymore, and he knows exactly what to offer. The roads here need fixing. The school's underfunded. Half the people organizing this could use that money." Francis looked up at her. "And if you take this to the press?" "They'll spin it," she said. "Say I forged it. Say I'm bitter. Call me unstable." He studied her for a long moment. "You think he'd do that to his own daughter?" She gave a hollow laugh. "I think he already has." Silence pressed in between them, thick and sharp. "I don't know what to do," Athena whispered, eyes wet. "I've come this far, and suddenly it feels like I'm standing in quicksand." Francis stepped closer. "You've already made your choice, Athena." She looked up, searching his face. "Then why does it still feel like I'm losing everything?" He reached for her hand, his touch grounding. "Because you are. The things that never really belonged to you. They're finally letting go." She didn't speak, but the weight of those words settled in her bones. The door opened behind them. It was Nora. She stood in the doorway, damp from the drizzle, eyes locked on Athena. "I saw the email," she said quietly. "Mabel showed me." Athena's breath caught. "Nora." But the girl held up a hand. "You could take it, and no one would blame you." Athena swallowed hard. "That's not who I want to be." Nora stepped closer. "Then don't flinch now." Their eyes met, something silent passing between them, something that finally didn't have to be spoken out loud. Francis watched the two of them, his throat tight. Nora turned to her father. "Boats are ready, signs are painted, news crews are setting up." She glanced back at Athena. "Come on, let's finish what we started." By sunrise, the harbor had changed. Boats lined the outer dock, bobbing in the tide, flags flying from their masts. People stood shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in scarves and resolve. Handmade signs waved above the fog. Families, fishermen, teenagers, elders in wheelchairs. It wasn't chaos. It was quiet, powerful, intentional. Athena stood near the dock's edge, heart thudding in her ears. Cameras were rolling, reporters murmured. Questions hovered in the air. She stepped forward to the makeshift podium, a splintered crate set atop the pier. She didn't need a speech. She just needed to speak. "I'm not here to sell you a dream. she began. "I'm here because someone already tried to sell yours out from under you." Eyes turned toward her. Phones lifted. Silence grew. "My name is Athena Morgan, and I'm the daughter of the man trying to erase this place. I was raised in rooms where profit came before people, where towns like this were called undeveloped potential." She paused, the wind catching her breath. "But this isn't potential. It's already something. It's enough." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. "I came here by accident, but I'm staying by choice, because this town reminded me who I was before I became a product of someone else's agenda." Athena glanced back, eyes meeting Francis's. "And I'm not going to disappear this time. I stand with Port Clyde." The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in something deeper. Applause, real, raw, unfiltered. Nora stepped beside her, lifting a sign over her head. Francis watched from the dock, something settling in his chest. Not peace, not yet, but belief. For the first time in a long, long while. The harbour never sounded louder in silence than it did the morning after the protest. The water, usually a soft presence in the background, seemed to pulse with something more alive. Like it knew the town had shifted somehow. Like it was holding its breath right along with them. Athena sat on the back steps of the cabin, wrapped in a thick quilt, staring down at her hands. They still trembled slightly. Not from cold, but from the weight of what had happened, of what might still come. Behind her, the radio hummed low inside the kitchen. A local station replayed snippets from the protest. "Daughter of Fabian Morgan, the CEO behind Greenshaw Development, took a public stand against the deal yesterday. An unexpected twist in a battle that's drawn regional attention." Her name was out there now, not just whispered in rooms, but printed in headlines, seen in headlines. The heiress who said no. The door creaked open. Francis stepped outside, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He didn't say anything at first, just sat beside her and handed one over. "They said your speech made the national rounds," he said quietly. "Morning news, evening replays, syndicates, even Boston's running it." Athena blinked. "I didn't think it would spread that fast." "You put your name on the line," he said. "Of course it did." She took a sip of coffee. Her throat was dry, the heat grounding. "I should feel proud," she murmured. "But mostly I feel watched." Francis looked out over the water, eyes tracing the early morning fog that curled low against the shore. "Your life's been under a microscope longer than you admit. The only difference now is you're finally deciding what it reflects." Athena didn't reply, but the truth of his words nestled deep. The screen door opened again, quicker this time. Nora stepped out, still in her hoodie, dark circles under her eyes. She hesitated when she saw them. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said. "You didn't," Francis replied. Nora looked at Athena. "Reporters are calling Mabel and Owen. They're looking for people who'll talk about the history of the docks, the families behind the boats." Athena stood slowly. "We need to make sure they get the real story, not the company's version." Nora nodded. "I started writing down everyone I know who'll speak. I can help coordinate, keep it from turning into a circus." Athena's chest tightened, not with anxiety, but with gratitude. "You've done more than I could have asked for," she said. Nora shrugged, but her voice softened. "Just don't disappear after this." Athena stepped forward. "I'm not going anywhere." Francis stood behind them, watching something shift, not just in Athena, but in his daughter. The lines between resistance and trust weren't so hard anymore. They bent, they gave. Later that afternoon, the town met again, not in the council hall, but on the wharf. Old men with calloused hands and faded jackets stood beside women who'd baked pies for every town fundraiser in living memory. Teenagers from the local school handed out hot cider. Even visitors who'd once passed through without looking twice were now leaning in, listening, asking questions. Athena stood near the front with Nora, pointing out fishing families to a pair of local reporters. Francis moved between them all, organizing, redirecting, answering when the cameras pushed too close, and when one of the reporters asked for a quote about Fabian Morgan, Athena paused. "I don't want to talk about him," she said. "I want to talk about them." She gestured toward the boats, the people, the docks worn smooth by generations. "This town is the story." That night, back at the cabin, the three of them sat around the table. Athena, Francis, Nora. Dinner was simple: fish stew, warm bread, quiet conversation. But the energy in the room was different. It felt like something had finally settled. Afterward, Francis stood by the stove, pouring tea while Nora cleared the dishes. Athena leaned against the counter, watching them move like a rhythm she'd never known she'd needed. Nora turned suddenly. "Do you miss it?" Athena blinked. "What?" "The world you came from, the money, the power, the name." Athena took a moment before answering. "I miss what I thought it could give me. But now I know. It didn't give me anything I couldn't find here. It just drowned out what mattered." Nora didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. And that was enough. As the night wore on, the fog thickened again, cloaking the harbor in soft grey. Athena stepped outside, standing on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. Francis joined her a moment later, his hands in his pockets. "They'll vote tomorrow," he said. She nodded. "I know." "You ready for that?" "No," she said honestly. "But I believe in what we did. I believe in this town." Francis turned to her, his voice low. "I believe in you." She looked up, surprised. "You didn't just come here to escape," he continued. "You came here to remember who you were before you were someone's legacy." Athena swallowed hard. "And who is that?" Francis stepped closer. "Someone who tells the truth, even when it hurts." Their eyes met, long and quiet. Then, slowly, she leaned into him. Not a kiss. Not yet. Just presence, warmth, something steady enough to rest against. And in the distance, the harbor hummed. Waiting. Watching. Ready. The rain came in waves the next morning, soft and relentless, as if the sky itself was unsure whether to weep or wash everything clean. Athena sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in her knit cardigan, staring at a single piece of paper folded neatly in front of her. It had arrived in a courier's envelope, hand-delivered just after sunrise. No note, no fanfare, just a letterhead she knew all too well. Morgan Maritime Holdings. She hadn't opened it yet. Francis moved quietly around the kitchen behind her, making eggs and toast like it was any other morning. But she could feel his awareness, how he was tracking every breath, every small shift in her posture. Finally, she spoke. "It's from him." He didn't need to ask who. "Want me to step out?" Athena shook her head. "Number, I don't want to open it alone." She unfolded the letter slowly, fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed it flat. The words were typed. Clean, corporate, clinical. It wasn't long. That somehow made it worse. "Athena, your behavior over the last 2 weeks has left me no choice but to sever both personal and professional ties. You've made your position clear, so allow me to do the same. There will be no more contact, no financial support, no protection from the consequences you've chosen to embrace. I suggest you find peace in the life you've so clearly decided to lead. Fabian." She read it twice, then again. The third time, the words blurred. Francis placed a cup of coffee next to her, silent. Athena exhaled slowly, her voice small. He signed it with a dash, not even his name. Francis sat down across from her. "You knew it might come to this." "I did." She folded the letter back with careful fingers. "But I didn't think it would feel like this. like being erased in real time. Francis didn't offer her platitudes, just sat there, present, steady. Athena looked up at him, her voice shaking now. He's not angry. He's cold, detached, like I was a failed investment. Francis leaned forward slightly. He's losing control. And men like that, they don't show anger. They show absence. She blinked fast. It still hurts. I know. She pushed the letter away and rubbed her hands over her face. This was never just about the docs. It was always about choosing who I'm going to be when no one's looking. Francis nodded. And now you know. They sat in silence for a moment until Nora walked in, damp from the rain, hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her eyes flicked to the table, to the letter, then to Athena's face. Is it done? She asked. Athena nodded. It's done. Nora crossed the kitchen and sat beside her without a word. Then, after a long pause, she reached over and slid a bracelet off her wrist. Simple, woven, made of frayed red thread. I made this when Mum got sick, she said quietly. Said it was supposed to be for strength. I've had it since I was 11. Athena stared at her, unsure. Nora slipped it onto Athena's wrist. You can borrow it, she said, just until the vote. Athena swallowed hard. Thank you. Nora stood again quickly, brushing off emotion like sea spray. You should eat. Mabel said the reporters are swarming the wharf again. And with that, she was gone. Athena stared at the bracelet, her throat tight. Francis smiled softly. She doesn't give away anything unless she means it, he said. Athena looked at him. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. He stood, crossed the kitchen, and placed his hand over hers. You already are. Later, down at the wharf, the energy was different. Not anxious, expectant, like something was coming. Like the whole town was leaning forward just slightly, waiting for a verdict. Reporters milled about, fishermen huddled in groups, watching the town hall doors as if willing them open. Boats rocked in the water, like they too had something to say. Athena stood near the edge of the dock, the red thread bracelet tight around her wrist, and watched the council members file in one by one. Nora joined her, hands in her coat pockets. You think they'll do it? I don't know, Athena admitted, but I know we gave them every reason to. Nora glanced at her sideways. You know, if they vote yes, if they protect the dock, you could stay. For real. Athena blinked. Do you want me to? Nora didn't answer, just looked back at the building and said, I wouldn't hate it. An hour passed, then another. People were getting restless. A few sat on benches under umbrellas. Others paced. Finally, the town hall doors creaked open. The councilwoman, with wire-rimmed glasses, stepped out, her folder in hand, her expression unreadable. The crowd pressed forward slightly. The vote has been taken, she said, raising her voice above the rain. With a majority of 4-1, Athena held her breath. The council has voted to reject the sale of the eastern dock. The cheers weren't loud, they were deep. Relief cracked like thunder across the harbor. Clapping, hugging, exhaling. Athena let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Francis found her through the crowd, soaked to the shoulders but smiling wide. Nora grabbed Athena's arm and squeezed it once before stepping back to give space. Francis reached her, his hand slipping around hers. You did it, he said. No, she replied, voice breaking. We did. He pulled her into an embrace, tight and warm and real. No cameras, no headlines, just them. And for the first time in her life, Athena didn't feel like she was standing on the edge of something. She was standing inside it, right where she was meant to be. The fog was finally gone. For the first time in days, the sky over Port Clyde opened wide, clear and blue, washed clean by rain and resistance. The harbour gleamed beneath the morning sun, boats gently swaying with the tide like they were exhaling. It didn't feel like just another day. It felt like the beginning of something. Athena stood outside Mabel's bakery, helping Nora string a banner across the porch. "Thank you, Port Clyde." It fluttered lightly in the breeze, and Athena smiled as she stepped back to admire it. Nora didn't say anything, but there was no mistaking the satisfaction in her quiet nod. Inside, the smell of cinnamon and coffee curled through the air, warm and comforting. Locals wandered in and out, arms full of fresh bread and congratulations. No one was in a hurry. Conversations lingered. People smiled longer than usual. Athena poured coffee into a carafe and brought it to the front window where Francis was repairing one of the cafe's old benches. He looked up as she approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "That for me, or are you just flaunting the fact that you learned how to use the coffee pot?" he teased. She handed him the cup with a smirk. "It still growls at me sometimes, but I think we've come to an understanding." He took a sip, watching her over the rim of the mug. "You look lighter." Athena settled beside him on the bench. "I feel it, like something finally unclenched. The town's not going to forget what you did." "I didn't do it for that." "I know." He paused. "But you did it anyway." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as people passed by. Owen waved from across the street, carting crates of fresh fish. Mabel leaned against the doorframe, humming as she handed out muffins wrapped in paper. "It's strange," Athena said softly. "For so long, I thought impact had to come from scale, from reach, from money. But all it really took was deciding to stand still long enough for something to matter." Francis looked at her, his voice quieter now. "You've changed." "I've remembered," she corrected, "who I was before I became someone else's project." He nodded and then asked, "And who are you now?" Athena looked around, at the dock, at the sun rising on sails and storefronts, at Nora laughing with two friends she hadn't been talking to a week ago. "I think I'm someone who stays," she said. Francis didn't answer right away. He just reached out and brushed a piece of hair from her cheek, his fingers gentle, steady. "I think I'm someone who's glad you did." The moment between them was quiet, but heavy with everything that had built over the last weeks. Then the bell above the bakery door rang, and Nora leaned out. "You guys coming, or just planning to flirt on the porch all day?" Athena raised an eyebrow. "Are you okay with me flirting with your dad?" Nora gave her a look. "Just don't make it weird." Francis snorted. That ship sailed. They walked into the bakery together, laughter following them in. The room was filled with more than the scent of sugar and spice. It buzzed with newness, new hope, new trust, new beginnings. Mabel clapped her hands. "All right, listen up. We're officially planning the Dock Festival. 1 month from today. Community-led. No corporate sponsors. And we need volunteers." "I'll help with setup," Nora said immediately. "Mabel, I'll do the flyers," Athena offered. Francis nodded. "I'll make sure the boats are ready for the harbor parade." The room filled with overlapping plans, ideas, lists. But Athena stood in the middle of it, just absorbing, watching faces, listening to voices. It didn't feel like she was trying to belong anymore. She already did. That night, the air turned cool again, the kind of chill that asks for sweaters and slow walks under quiet stars. Athena stood with Francis near the end of the dock, the moonlight spreading across the water like silk. "Do you miss it?" he asked. She looked up. "What?" "The world you left." She thought about it. "Sometimes. I miss knowing exactly who I was supposed to be, even if it wasn't who I wanted to be. And now I don't always know what comes next. But I'm not afraid of it." He turned towards her, his voice low. "That's braver than anything you've done so far." She didn't say anything, just leaned her head gently against his shoulder, feeling the way the dock swayed beneath their feet. In the distance, the boat slept. The harbor, for the first time in years, was quiet, and Athena finally knew what peace sounded like. The boat was small, freshly painted, gently bobbing near the dock, its name curved in careful script across the stern, the Mabel. Athena stood at the edge of the wharf, one hand resting on the worn wood post, the other gently tracing the bracelet still tied around her wrist. The red thread was frayed now, a little looser than it had been, but she hadn't taken it off. Not since the day Nora gave it to her. She would have cried seeing that name on a boat, Francis said from beside her, his voice touched with warmth. Then claimed she hated the attention? Athena smiled, and secretly loved every second of it. A breeze picked up, rustling the flag strung across the harbor. The dock festival was in full swing. Children ran between booths, teenagers handed out flyers, and locals swarmed the co-op tables, laughing louder than usual. The air smelled like fresh chowder and sea air and something sweet baking from Mabel's old oven, now run by 2 apprentices she had mentored before she passed. Athena took a slow breath. It doesn't feel like just a win anymore. It feels like a beginning. Francis looked at her, quiet. So, are you staying? She turned to face him. I already did. He stepped closer. Something different in his eyes now. Something no longer guarded, no longer waiting. I never expected you, he said softly. I never expected you either. Her voice was steady. But I think that's what makes this real. Francis reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. It felt like it had always belonged there. You came here during a storm, he said. And now look, calm waters. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. Maybe the storm wasn't the problem. Maybe it was the start. From behind them, Nora's voice called out, loud and sharp. You two gonna stand there forever, or are we christening this boat or not? Athena laughed, turning toward her. Give us a minute. Nora rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Really smiling. Like someone who finally knew everything was going to be okay. Francis squeezed Athena's hand once more. Come on, she'll make us scrub barnacles if we're late. They walked together toward the crowd, laughter rising around them, voices overlapping like wind and tide. And as the ribbon was cut and the Mabel rocked free into the harbor, Athena stood with one foot on the dock and one hand on the railing of her new life. No headlines, no legacy, just this. A place that asked nothing of her but the truth, and for the first time, maybe ever, that was enough.